formed in a dream, kept in a thought, carried across oceans, spoken in whispers, passed down from elders, planted in gardens of okra, prayed for in sanctuary, resisted with fury, protected with faith, created with love, born into being. From root to bone, you are here.
This podcast talks about colonial, racial, and gender-based violence. Please listen at your own pace and capacity. And remember to do what you need to do to care for yourself if you feel activated by this content. Should you need resources, please check out our section on resources at decolonizingtherapy.com. Be well. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Jenn. It is such a pleasure to be here, witnessed by, received by, inviting in Ruth King, the Ruth King, should I add. And so I want to start off inviting everybody to take a few beats, to take a few breaths, to land, to catch your breath, to unlock that jaw. I'm speaking to myself here too. To allow yourself to settle in, to find your seat, and to find a place where you can truly land. And so the invitation for this space and this podcast is that we step into a zone where we can be more ourselves, take off a few masks, unfurl, remind ourselves that we're deeply tethered to land, to source, to other, to one another as well. And in this moment and in this collective space and time, the invitation, if you have it around you, is to grab some water or tea, light some incense or a candle. The invitation is to soften, however which way that happens for you. Because I know for me, softening wasn't easy. That's one of the things we'll dive into today with our amazing guest. Each podcast session, we'll be adding to this virtual altar, right? An altar for me is something that is sacred, that is special, that is sexy, that is inviting and desiring and welcoming. That is a special place. That's a sacred place. That's a cute place. And so for me, for today, before I introduce our amazing guest, I am going to add to the altar a picture which I added to my rage altar many, many years ago when I met Ruth King upon attending Ruth's Rage Retreat, which is this little picture of me. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. And all of my ragey, happy glory, puffing out of this little two-piece at the Jersey Shore. Hair is wild. And I'm just like, what? Right? So I'm going to add this to our altar because I like to remind myself that I came into this world bold and free. And I also want to add this amazing black obsidian jaguar that was gifted to me. And I think jaguar medicine and energy has taught me a lot about rage, in which many people think that jaguars often are just like violent and bloodthirsty. And the reality is they hurt very few humans. Yeah. And it is about survival. However, when they do impact, they go straight for the head. And that's another story for another day. But it's very rarely are they attempting to harm anyone. They're sort of minding their business, like to move around in solitary at dusk. And they have beautiful medicine in shamanism, which I'm deeply embedded into. So I place that onto my altar as well. Miss Mama Ruth, amazing Ruth. I'm going to read a little piece from a canon, right? Because for me, I think I have referred Healing Rage, Women Making Inner Peace Possible to probably thousands of people. I've bought numerous copies. I'm clearly not saying this to, getting to your good graces or to come across like I buy a lot of copies, but I just believe everybody is requiring of understanding how rage is part of who we are. It is not something to be per se just released or dug underground or to be ignored or to be avoided, but rather to get curious about, right? To possibly form a relationship to understand how it's, as you've always said, it's the love child of childhood trauma. Yeah. And shame. And that has always stuck with me. And I think understanding the rage disguises and how they have protected us for so long. And sometimes we don't need them anymore. And we have them and we're wearing these masks, whether distraction, devote, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, but whether dominance, distraction, defiance, depression, and not always in that clinical sense is from what I always understood. Yes. That we're wearing these thinking, this is who I am. This is my personality. This is all of me. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And the way I've understood it is that's part of the protection. That's part of the trauma response in some ways, or maybe the ancestral trauma response. Yeah. So I'd love to read a little something to you of your words, and allow you to just receive and then introduce and talk to you about how this lands for you. The basic assumption of healing rage is that unresolved rage from childhood trauma is still locked in our bodies and minds. This blocked energy manifests as disguises of rage in our adult lives, ways we cope with life while denying an intimate experience with living. These disguises become such an ingrained part of our existence that we forget the origins of our rage. While our disguises of rage attempt to protect us from the pain of our past, they more often recreate the past and perpetuate the very suffering we seek to avoid. Unresolved rage has been passed on from one generation to the next, contributing to rage legacies that collectively plague the world. Each of us embodies a rage inheritance from our parents and ancestors that presents itself as an opportunity to transform personal and generational suffering. For example, you may have purchased this book because you realize that your rage is impeding your relationships and quality of life. Perhaps you're suffering from a loss, birth, unexpected change, lingering sadness, recurring dream, disturbing encounter, or struggling with an illness. You may be seeking to understand an aspect of yourself that you're ashamed or frightened of. Understandably, you may be afraid of or bewildered by the rage that is all around you and seek ways to turn within for refuge. Whatever the reasons, the fierce truth of rage is calling you to take a courageous step towards greater self-awareness, inner peace, and liberation. Rage isn't going away. I would like to welcome one of my teachers. I'm still learning, still unlearning, still growing, Ruth King. So I'm going to drop for y'all one of the official bios and then a little bit of my experience of meeting rage. So Ruth King is an elder, a heart activist, African-American with Choctaw roots and native Californian, currently residing on the unceded territory of the Catawba Indigenous Nations in Charlotte, North Carolina, with wife Dr. Barbara Riley. King is the founder of Mindful of Race Institute, LLC, and is a celebrated author, educator, and meditation teacher. King has been an organizational development consultant to Fortune 500 corporations and teaches mindfulness meditation retreats worldwide. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so touched by this invitation and just to see you and your radiance, to be tracking you over so many years, all the blossoming that you are, the generosity of spirit, the beautiful teachings that you offer. I'm deeply touched to be with you again in this particular way where I'm learning as well from you, and just being able to bathe in this beautiful inaugural and opportunity to support your community. That's just a broadening and broadening of circles of healing. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
invitation.
Thank you. Okay, we can stop the podcast now. No, just kidding.
Listen,
okay,
when you were reading about me, it was like I was saying, I want to meet her. Where did
Don't we love when that happens? We're like,
Right?
me? We're doing a movie? Yes. Let me just tell y'all, okay, when I, many moons ago, without getting into like little Jenn 20-something-year-old stuff, I was living in what we now understand is the Bay Area, in California, and going to grad school. And I had all my East Coast ragey anger, chip on shoulder, can't tell me nothing. And I had some really intense experiences working with individuals that were incarcerated for sex offenses, very violent sex offenses towards all different bodies, people, and children. And my stuff was coming up big time. My shit was up. And beloved teacher and elder, Dr. Bula Cofield, was working with me and helping me to sit with a lot of this pain and a lot of the stuff that I wanted to avoid because I didn't want to blow up. And especially in the energy I was in California, folks felt, generally speaking, like pretty grounded and definitely less intense than some of the kind of energy that was moving in where I grew up, in Jersey City, New Jersey. And I had a particular experience that I do write about in my book, Decolonizing Therapy, where I was like sort of being followed by this gentleman that was attempting to, quote, get my number. And increasingly, I thought I'm going to have to fight for my life because I was going different ways and there are cars going around and all of this sort of stuff is happening. And finally, when I get to my block, I thought I lost the person and they pull into the driveway next to my house and I lost it. Right? Ruth, you understand? Like we lost it, whatever that means in terms of body and thematics and energy. And I dropped my stuff and whoever I was talking to on the phone and I'm screaming and like, bring it. I'm just ready to like Jaguar, like ready to just go and protect. Yeah. And thank goodness, shout out to Oakland, like Merritt area, and like people are shouting out the window and like, we got you, sister, we're coming down. And like and I don't remember Ruth 2 days after that. I don't remember. I went to school. I went upstairs, I was fine. And when I saw Bola, she's like, Jenny girl, it's time. Well, I can't do her voice. You know her voice.
I really miss her too.
Yes. She'll be on the show soon too. Jenny girl, it's really time. I've mentioned it before and I'm going to tell you again. It's time that you connect with Sister Ruth. And I was like, what do you mean? I need you. I don't need anyone, right? Because I was so stuck and like attached in some ways. And as we do sometimes, right? I got to say, I felt safe. Bola was safe. And Bola was like, Ruth is doing beautiful work around rage and beautiful work around meditation and spirit rock and, just all of these things. And somehow, on a student budget, I think you hooked me up with some extra big scholarship because I didn't have the money for it. And you allowed me into this magnificent rage retreat in the Berkeley Hills with you and your partner and others. Yeah. Some of which I'm still in contact with today. And it rocked my world, Ruth. Like it rocked my world because you allowed me to accept parts that were too shadowy, that I tried to bury. And you allowed me to formulate language for what I didn't understand around rage. You allowed me to understand some of the abuse in terms of patriarchy, my father, male and men energy, and kind of be able to sit with that and look at that and also release in a container, you know? And I think Black, brown, queer women, well, like there's not often containers, safe enough, good enough, healthy enough containers by other amazing bodies of culture, you know? So that is my recollection of you. And so as an invitation, I just wonder, yes, I said a lot. I'm just wondering, we want to hear from you now. I'm wondering any thoughts, what you're coming in with today, whether it's laying onto our altar, how you felt about hearing the reading, or anything else that you choose to share with us in this moment.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. There's so much I could say. That was such a time, those celebration of rage retreats. And it just reminds me of the power of ceremony and the sacred space that's needed to mirror the dignity of this vibrant life force emotion that's worthy of sitting at the table of our emotional life. And I think it's important that it has its day in court to tell its stories. And the in court part could be any number of environments that have been tenderly prepared for us to enter. I'm reminded of the preparatory stages of that retreat where we looked at which Orisha to work with and what offerings to bring for the support that we needed going through that, working with that sacred energy. So it's not just cathartic because we're doing the work of so many generations when we tap into, I mean, a lot of people have rage. I mean, I was dead right with mine. I didn't think I had rage. I think I had a right to express my truth. I even had a well-paying job that paid me to tell people what to do. And it actually validated my rage. But what I didn't realize was that I was dead right a lot of the time. Right? And at some point, some of us, not all of us, but enough of us, right? A critical mass of us that are doing this, that's called in to transmute this energy, not just have it blow out, but have it blow out so that we can reclaim the space that it's occupied, that's deadened us, right? So it's more of a reclaiming. We're allowing this explode. It's like a volcano. Explodes, it kills everything in its path as it spews out the heat. And once it cools, there's something else that's able to sprout through. You start to see whole villages and forests grow out of that area. So it's kind of like that. It's what it frees us into working with rage. It's what it opens us into. It's what we get to reclaim. A life that's bigger than the life we think we've been living. The lie, actually, that we think we've been living. So it really is a sacred path of light, of insight, of warmth, and of healing, and of accepting not just what we think should be the beautiful life, but seeing how the harshness and the dark sides and the untouchable parts of ourselves, when touched, can really open us to the union, the love that we seek, the connections that we long for, the memories that have been lost, the healings that our ancestors are screaming for. That which is the reason why we're here, to kind of clean that up, clean that karmic scream into a song, right?
Well,
So I think we've all inherited what's unfinished, And then it gets bigger than life in our relational work fields. We feel contracted and collapsed and hungry, emotionally hungry. We find ourselves in situations that don't serve us, but oddly they're familiar. So it just can open us to a lot of questions. It's not a pleasant journey necessarily, but I think it's and it's a life's work too. It's not like we get this hit, right, and then we're done. It opens us to the recurring question of how do I stay whole? How do I stay more honest with myself? How do I stay present with this moment instead of compounding other layers that are from the past or that represent a certain fear about taking a step forward?
Yeah, because that's hard.
Isn't it hard? Right?
Yeah, to keep coming back to present
Yeah.
when there's so many distractions and so much that needs tending to as well in the world. I wonder how do you keep coming back to present? What are some of the ways? What are some of the tethers or things or anything you can even offer the world
Mm-hmm.
related to coming back over and over and over?
Therapy was invaluable
Mm-hmm.
on this journey of decolonizing, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And all the bumps and bruises that goes with that when you're with a therapist that can't see you in these subtle ways that we hide, because we can be so good at it as Black folks. So if you've got a therapist that can't decode that to some extent or understand it, then the work, it's not that the work isn't happening, it's just, it becomes a little more taxing for us. But therapy was invaluable. Body work was invaluable. For a number of years, I alternated between seeing a therapist. I was lucky enough to have this amazing therapist. She passed away in the Bay Area for a number of years, and I alternated therapy with Rose and body work. And that was a particular form of body work that supported a real quiet entry into connecting with intense emotions. It was a surprising journey. I didn't think I needed any of that, but and then I think one of the biggest pivots for me was through mindfulness meditation. When I stepped into Buddhism, particularly the Theravada tradition of Buddhism, which is what I teach now in retreats and meditation retreats. But the Theravadins, considered the elders in the tradition, work primarily with the delineations and gradations of the mind and how we're in relationship with our thoughts, how thoughts get constructed, how we attach to them, elaborate them, distort them, believe them, and then, then the rest is history. And how to re-examine that through a practice of getting still and listening more deeply to what's there as opposed to what we construct. So that's a particular path of decolonizing, if you will, that was really important for me to rest with. And, it occurred to me somewhere along the line, with therapy, I got an understanding of how things came to be. With mindfulness, I got an understanding of how I can leave it alone. Right? It's like, okay, I know that shit already. I know that. I know it so well, but how do I leave it alone? How is that not my default? Is what meditation helped me be with, because if I'm not attaching to a story, I'm in the space of being in between it, right? So what is my relationship with space? What is my relationship with emptiness of story? What is my relationship with not grasping, with not going for, well, if it's not my story, then is there a better story I can create, as opposed to no story at all, and just to see what it feels like to have these deep moments of emptiness that I can actually rest in. That was a game changer for me. And it was a flirtation initially, because in retreat, you get a little taste of that. And it's like, oh, and then you want some more of it, but you can't grab at it because then you never get it. But they come in when the conditions you're in, when you remove yourself, when you find a quiet space, if it's even a few breaths, and you park yourself in stillness, and you invite yourself to be intimate with your breathing, with the movement of the breath in the body as a lullaby, as a way of rocking you into presence, into ease. And you are teaching your body, heart, and mind to titrate into this kind of immediate intimacy you can have with yourself, that you think you have to run and get it somewhere through the next glass of red wine or the next black dress. I mean, I have about 20 of them, right? And, you have to look at this stuff after a while and say, really? Okay. Is it really going to help? Is that next bite of ice cream really going to help me? Or can I be with the 30 seconds of gotta have it? That's only going to pass, right?
Yes.
But if we think that 30 seconds is never going to go away unless we eat the ice cream, then we're really fooling ourselves. And it's this kind of mind shift and intimacy with the truth of how things work. Nothing is personal, is not permanent, is not perfect. That's my
Can you say that again for us?
Nothing in life is personal, permanent, or perfect. And this is rooted in the teachings, classical teaching of the Buddha, referred to as the three characteristics of the nature of our existence. And this has to do with all phenomena. It's not, So when we understand that as a backdrop, and then we walk our day-to-day lives, we could get attached to a racist comment, for example, being personal. And at some level it is. And oftentimes, for too many of us, this costs our lives, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not personal. But in another way to look at it is that it's not personal, right? It's what happens to people. Unfortunately, it's what happens to a lot of people that look like us. It doesn't have to be taken to that personal level, like something I did or didn't do or could have stopped. So having that teaching as kind of a backdrop in my heart and mind helps me shift my perspective when I'm in the immediacy of the craziness that we walk with day in and day out. It helps me stay anchored with what's actually happening now, and it helps me decide or choose to respond, as opposed to being in this knee-jerk reaction or this repetitive motion injury toward myself of feeling like I need to respond to every, what's the saying? You don't have to agree to go to every party you're invited to or every argument you're invited to.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, So I think we need to, in terms of answering the question, is what helps you return again and again, is being in a practice that supports you to remember. The Pali word for mindfulness is sati. And the root meaning of that word is to remember, not to remember our past, but to remember to come to the present moment again and again. That's what mindfulness is. But we have to be taught to what we're looking at in the present moment. Because if we're just looking at the stories in the mind, I think we can get snagged pretty easily.
Yeah.
If we're looking at the patterns and seeing them as not personal, as impermanent, as impersonal, as shit happens, life is just not pretty all the time. How do you be with that in a real way, right? Suffering is real. How do you get with that? That means something. It means you're gonna feel it, right? So that's the remembering and returning again and returning to the breath again and again, returning to this body again and again. And what's happening here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where am I contracted? When did I stop breathing? Why am I sweating? Why am I gripping my behind? And I'm not just washing the dishes. Okay. Why do I need to be gripped now? It's just a habit, right?
Yes. Yes. Ruth, as we're talking, I have so many questions. And at the same time, I'm like, slow down. I'm telling my mind, slow down. And what? Okay, look, I just came back a couple of weeks ago from the first of a very long time Buddhist retreat for myself. And from what I hear, your retreats are pretty hardcore. So I know, look, like give me the
not
phone,
hardcore, but go ahead.
phone, give me the phone, and I'm like, no, I don't want to get rid of it. No.
The silent part, right?
I heard a rumor that these get collected, and I'm like, look, call me a little.
It is a choice, right?
It is,
but like there's a whole lot of pressure, right? But go ahead.
and I knew, look, I knew I wasn't ready yet. I will be, but I knew that I'm slowly easing myself in, and I wanted to go overseas for whatever reasons, right? And so it was a 5-6 day, and without getting into all the biz, I'm going to get to the question. And I just want to say that for someone like me, that yes, I'm aware of this story. Yes, I over intellectualize way too much. Yes, I know I have to drop into my body more, all of this. And I consider myself pretty self-aware. I'm pretty self-aware, constantly looking at how I'm impacting others, the story that I'm concocting, what are some of these, all of it. And the minute that we went into silence after dinner that Friday evening, I felt panic all over my body. It was relief, but that relief was hidden. That's the best way I could say it. Right. And again, more novice here, like novice, like I've been, as you said, flirting with it throughout my life, but not really diving in and really feeling a need because of the collective, unresolved grief and anxiety and in myself that this is important. I need to be able to know how to hold my own silence and be able to hold space for myself and for others. And so in reattending to this, I get there, have this moment, as soon as silence hit, and I realized how much I'm orienting towards everybody else. Wait, we have an hour. What are people doing? Are they going to nap? Are they going to walk? In my head, right? And I'm looking for like the buddy I met in the beginning to see if they want to make eye contact, right? And I find myself, and I'm like, I thought this was just my mama. Mama is coming out of me, right? And if she watches this, she's gonna laugh and say, "I know." Right? My mom is the one that is like codependent and aware of it and working on it, And I'm thinking, wow. And as the first evening hit, pain and panic both came up. Yeah. And a sense of, I need to look on my phone. I need to do something because everyone else in my room is asleep at 10:30 at night. And I'm not tired. Granted, time change, 5-hour time change. So that's real. But mostly I was with myself. And that shit was hard. And I went outside in the dark and I walked around and I'm talking to the land and I'm screaming out for my ancestors. And I see one or two people clearly in it as well, or walking and trying to be with. And I can't say I ever quite got it. And I did read a little bit in order to get to sleep, but I realized evenings were my hardest. And so, of course, I'm not asking for just like feedback on mine, but I'm wondering for those of us that are still unlearning, this relationship with just busyness and avoidance and distraction. That's always one of my big disguises, one of my rage disguises.
Yes.
Always distraction.
Yeah.
Always. I wonder how one might, what's the entry point there? How
that's such a good question. Yeah. And here's what I would say. I mean, if you look at this like this is an opportunity for me to look at how I do my life, right?
Right.
So it's not like the distractions. Let's just say the distraction is not personal. It's a habit of mind. It's a conditioning. And the good things about habits is that they can change. But when you go on retreat, the stillness invites us to witness. We become awake to a lot of other things in the absence of speaking. It's like when one's sense door closes down, the other ones amp up, like the hearing amps up, the thinking, which is a sense door, the mind, the thinking amps up, the smells amps up, all of these things get a little bit more intense, not for us to fix it or judge it, but for us to see, wow, I'm judging. Wow, I'm comparing myself to other people. Wow, I'm trying to fix something. Wow, I'm going a little nuts because I'm really wanting. One of the teachings in Buddhism is seeing the craving, seeing the wanting. So the witnessing is what gets amplified, and we see our habits of mind, our impulses, our tendencies, and if we can, we'll examine them. Now, we're not going to all get it in one retreat. It's a life's work. But if you're curious, and I mean, it's not a practice for everyone. I have to say that. I think everyone should have it, but it really isn't a path for everyone. But if you're able to tolerate the journey, because it is a path, right? And we take a step at a time. It's like the cha-cha. You take 2 steps up and 2 back. So it's not meant to be like this kind of straight thing. And, a lot of people come on retreat and they compare the last one with this one and wonder why they just can't keep having those moments that felt better than the other. But it's not to judge the moments. What it's useful to me is to see that some moment it's impermanent again. Some moments are going to be to our liking, and others are going to be disgusting and embarrassing and shameful to see them kind of float through. And they all arise and pass away. And our practice on retreat is to, if you've ever gone to the observatory and you lay back in the chair and open up to the big dome and see all this movement coming and going. And the practice is to see if you can relax in your seat and witness it and be curious about it and to turn down the knob of judgment and comparing. But that's what we do. So it's we're not going to stop necessarily doing it, but we're going to be able to watch ourselves doing our thing, right? Yeah. Doing our habit. And it became, to me, after a while, I could actually play like I'm in a comedy show. And it's like, look, I can't believe at this stage of the game, after practicing 50 years, I'm still, but I'm not hard on myself about it. I'm tickled about it because I have improved over the years. I'm not as tangled, but I don't beat myself up to the degree that I can't function. I get tickled and I just sit up a little straighter and walk with a bit more warmth and a bit more of a smile on my face and a bit more understanding of the human condition, because this is what everybody's doing. Yes. Right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
One way to play with that,
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder how important it is to play. Yeah. To play. Yeah. And you said something about like not taking it so seriously is what I hear, right? Like even after 50 something years of doing this, it's like, there you are.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, there, okay, right. Here we are.
And sometimes I'll put them all in a little costume, Yeah, I mean, the rage disguises are similar, right? These are like all caricatures that have little outfits, and they come dance and take up some space at times. But they're really for our ears. They're really there to say, hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. I'm worthy of being seen, you know. But it's not like you take it and it's the absolute truth. That's where we get into trouble. We take it as a solid, never changing truth, and then we kick our own asses around it again and again. And then we internalize the very abuse we're trying to move away from. So that's what we want to interrupt. And a mindfulness practice helps us see that and soften into transmuting it with a sense of care and compassion.
Yes.
It's a beautiful way to walk.
Yes. What I'm hearing is that it helps, the mindfulness practice helps interrupt the self-violence or the harm, right? This cycle of harm that we've been conditioned, right?
Yeah.
Unconsciously or not, right? Through
Right.
parents, society, you name it, right? Generational values. It's so hard to be kind often to oneself. And you briefly mentioned, you kind of put in there like the rage disguises, and I just imagine like distraction with like a mustache and like and a gown, right? And an Amazon cart and a joint at the same time. Or maybe I'm projecting. But yeah, like I'm wondering, and it's okay with you. I love weaving in and out and back and forth because I don't think I'm the only one, but there is something about the symbolism or the I don't know, it's intriguing when I think of Buddhism and mindfulness and like the original OG rage, like God, grandmother, auntie, Ruth King, and blackness and queer, all of it. And I just wonder, how do you make sense of that? Do you make sense of that?
Well, yeah, sense is fleeting, okay? So
Word.
don't hold me to it because it might change tomorrow.
That's fair.
But the thing about us, as my experience being in this Black body, my people are a people that have always defied form. We defy form. It's not something we can escape, right? But when we are in any situation, for a lot of us, depending on our disguise, a lot of us will just challenge the form of it, to stretch the limit of it, to be out of the box of it. And some of this is because of our conditioning of being so contained. So freedom is about defined form. And the stretch of being our authentic form is often the case. So it's not a surprise to me that I would create a rage retreat. I'm trained as a psychologist. So, but a 15-minute session, which I benefited from profoundly. When I think of my people, I know we need something else that's outside of that structure. And so it was my way of creating an environment that defied form. So there's dance, there's vibrant music, there's working in blindfolds, there's being overly cared for throughout the experience.
Yes.
There's preparation, there's all of these things so that you can come in and be outrageous, right? In Buddhism, it didn't surprise me that in many of my retreats that I teach, not necessarily ones I go to, but the ones that I teach will bring in music. And at the last Black women's retreat at Spirit Rock earlier this year, where 97 women showed up, we ended up dancing in the meditation hall, okay? And then sitting with that aliveness, right? And meditating with what that opened and allowed to arise and be aerated, right? There's music, it's just a different form. There's chanting often in Buddhism, different form, bringing in some Black music, listening to a little bit of gospel, hearing some of the great jazz. all of these are ways that we bring in ancestry, bring in artistry, bring in our distinction that has been stripped from us. And even when we're with each other, sometimes it's stripped away because we can collude around a notion of who defines your Blackness or who defines your whatever your race is. So then we're in a group identity as opposed to our distinction being seen, which I think is so important. And I think the arts help us magnify and come out of hiding with what our distinctions are. So that's, again, about defying. It's not defined form like as in defiance, but maybe it is a little bit. What it is, it's coming out of hiding and having the permission to not be defined by a pre-existing somebody's definition other than your own. And I think we need places where we can experiment with what that is for us and how that feels to us and to be safe all while we're doing it. So I think wherever we find ourselves, I think these disguises of rage are all shapes that we take that's laid on top of a pure heart, if you will, a survival mechanism to to move through the forms that we find ourselves in. A lot of times these disguises are more fitting and expected of us than our true form is, our true distinction. And we'll wear these disguises just so that we can maybe be accepted or fit into some kind of shape. But it's not to be confused with the truth of who we are. So I think having permission where we can do that is important. So I do that. And I think my next interest is in looking at artistry as cultural medicine. Because I think when we're in the practice of artistry, whatever that is for us, whether it's writing or performing or being an amazing grandmother, whatever that is for us, we are in a mindfulness practice because we are in a practice of attending to present moment. And then when we create something and the intention is to offer it out, what it says to me is that I just think sometimes, Jenn, about how if we're all offering our distinction as a gift, it's almost like the medicine the world needs in order to bring a sense of belonging and wholeness, a direct experience of that to play. And so what is that for us? It's not going to look like anything else. It's like a signature. It's not going to be like anyone else's. No. Can we bring that? Can we rejoice, if you will, in whatever that imprint is for us and bring it through and up and out?
Yes.
Gift.
Yes, thank you. So many gems that you dropped. I had to write down little key words because I said, I have to go back and listen to this. And of course I'm going to listen to this, but I have to go back and listen to this for myself in my journal. One of the things I feel like we keep dancing around the rage disguises, and I want to honor that probably not everybody is really, really in tune, although I think they should be, but that's a whole other. I'm like, and especially if you're a practitioner, provider, healer, helper, space holder, advocate, social worker, I don't care what you do, please get yourself a copy. I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about the rage disguises, if you would feel comfortable with that, because I feel for me, there's such an in there, and I keep going back. And if you don't believe me, this is one of my original copybooks. I have the good copybook too. You know, the one that I don't touch. I think the reality is I've noticed that every few years, maybe not every year, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but like every few years, some of my disguises shift just a little bit. Just a little bit. I don't know if that's not every year because it feels like lifelong, but I do feel like I go through these deaths, right? These metaphorical, energetic deaths where I'm just transformed. And then if I take it a year later, there might be a few numbers that are a little bit lessened or above, but generally speaking, from my understanding, right? And I'm just going to read this for y'all. Right? Because, okay, disguises are a rage. This is Ruth King, of course, y'all. Disguises are a rage child's armor, the coats we wear year round to cope with the chill of life, even on a warm day. They are a rage child's way to remain in control of a chronically frightening life. Disguises keep our body and mind experiences split so that we can manage the intolerable threat of shame that may awaken traumatic childhood memories. Last line. Disguises also serve as symbolic templates of older stories of rage that require our attention. You wrote that. I was say you wrote that.
Right. I did it. I'm guilty.
Snatch my edges, man. Snatch
Right.
my
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Speak
So
to
we
it.
get these, we get these imprints early on. I mean, some of us, we all come in with temperaments, right?
Mhm.
Some of us are shy, some of us are more bold and all of that. So we got that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we're in an environment that hits us with certain understanding of how we need to be if we're
Mhm.
going to survive this situation. So then we concoct a way to be with that
Yes.
because we need to survive. So I often say these rage disguises are things that helped us survive, but they don't help us heal. But they have played a very important role for our understanding. And there's 6 of them. And there's 3 different types. There's the fight types, flight types, and shrink types. So the 2 fight types are dominance and defiance. And these are the folks that, are more likely to get in your face. The dominant disguise is likes to control everything to make sure they're never controlled. And the defiant disguise is those of us who fight. And it's kind of like ready, fire, and the aim never happens. It's like whoever is in the range is gonna
Listen.
benefit from how I feel about the situation. So defiance is what we typically associate with rage, but not necessarily the deepest truth that wants to be told. So those are the 2 fight types. And then the 2 flight types are distraction and devotion. Distraction is that part of us that's always busy and on the move and filling up every inch of our space to avoid not to to avoid feeling, because feeling can be scary.
Mhm.
And then the devotional type is in service to other people, oftentimes at the expense of their own
Mm.
well being.
Yeah.
So those are 2 flight types, flighting away from who they are through distraction and serving others. And then the 2 shrink types, one is depression, the other one is dependence. The dependence disguise is a person that colludes with staying small because their bigness is a threat to the people that they depend on.
Mm.
And then the depression disguise is heavy, walks with a heavy belief system that makes it difficult to lift out of whatever situation they might be in. And they're actually quite functioning, but the weight of how they function is usually heavy and, hard to be around. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those
That's
are the 6 disguises, and they all have shadows and they all have wisdom. And that's part of the template that you learn about. I actually have a course on this that's a lot of fun, that's really showing this. And the book, of course, is also available to kind of point these things out. I have an online course for it, but
beautiful, beautiful. And in the show notes, we'll include the course and all the
great.
book information and everything else for folks to be able to grab that and continue your journey of unlearning, unpacking, and loving on these disguises, right? And take, like you said, taking their wisdom as
Yeah,
well as understanding those shadowy, sandy bits and how
that's
they.
right. And to your point, which was, I feel like they've changed a little bit. I mean, the truth of the matter is that I can recognize myself in all these disguises, but we usually have one or two that we highly resonate with.
Yeah.
And the others can be seasonal
Yeah.
or
Okay.
episodic, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you're right about
That
that.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think that throughout the years, what's consistent for me personally is definitely distraction. And
Mhm.
I used to be a lot higher with devotion,
Mhm.
and that has decreased. I think when I've really taken back some of my own agency and power, and the level of burnout and exploitation I experienced, I think something really changed there. Like some of the work really embedded itself in who I am. But definitely a fight type. So,
Well, distraction, as you know, is a flight type.
mhm.
And the shadow of it is depression. So sometimes the activity of distraction keeps us away
Mm,
from depression.
mm,
And devotion, the shadow of devotion is defiance. Because if the devotion, the science isn't serving everybody, they'd be real pissed off that they even asked. Okay. So,
mm.
and
Yeah.
that's where the defiance part kicks in.
Yes.
So, those are the shadows. And when we embrace the shadows, we can start feeling like both our disguise and the shadow. But when we befriend the shadow, the wisdom is enhanced. So that's how that gets ripened. We gain the wisdom of our disguise by embracing the shadow.
To gain the wisdom of our disguise by embracing the shadow. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And so let's say, hypothetically, no.
Some of your best friends, right?
My bestie, right, the defiance, like as you were saying, right, that shadow of the devotion is defiance. Like, so for much of my life, I was okay with being hella defiant, right? Like, I kind of took it as like this little badge, like I had a little pin, not really, but it was sort of like, so what, right? I'm
Listen, it wasn't
rebellious.
invisible. We all saw it.
I
Okay.
know. Right? And the realization was two things. One, that the wisdom, I hope this makes sense. The wisdom that came in for the defiance is when I stopped trying to push it down and fearing this angry Black woman trope, right? Like, and I don't push it down and I don't attach too many stories to it, but I speak the truth when it is deeply desiring to be spoken and coming through me with like not always clear, but a sense of like, oh no, this needs to be said in this space right now, or I need to just address this because I'm being treated misfairly or being treated unfairly, or this child is not getting the access of what they need and I need to blank, blank, and blank. And I wouldn't call it defiant, but more defying a structure or a system, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, it's pointed. And what happens, what the purification component of this is that um, is that whatever, as we're shifting, the shift is bathed in an intent to do no harm, right?
Mm.
So you can be angry without hating, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
could be afraid without fearing that
Yes.
the whole world is against you, right?
Yes.
So it's that subtlety, right?
Yes.
I think sometimes we need the fierce arrow of defiance, but
Mm.
not the one that's dipped in hate, not the one that's intentionally harming. And that's the game changer.
It
You know,
is a game
that's
changer.
a good pause to ask that question. Okay, what am I coming from in making this response? Am I hating in this situation or am
Mm.
I healing? It's a
Mm.
repeat question.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And it's making me think about what many folks may be experiencing. I think this will air after November 5th. Yeah, 2024 in the election. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, right? Like that there is a lot up for many folks,
Absolutely.
understandably, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot up globally. And rage is something more than ever that people are starting to utilize, commonly talk about it, as well as the grief that we know that goes along with it, and then the shame. Um, and I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts and feels there related to what may or may not come about.
Mhm,
Some of the
mhm.
overwhelm. Because I do think, Ruth, that you're in such a beautiful place between, you know, all of your intersecting identities, but also your areas of expertise, right? And lived experience. And that's what I think real expertise freaking is, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
not only
Uh-huh.
do I have the lived experience, I know this in myself. I know this in my mind. I know this through my energy in my work and in my relationship with others. And I wonder, yeah, if there was something that you'd want to communicate to folks that are listening, that are feeling like this is overwhelming. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. And I just feel hate. Or I feel a lot of things that I haven't let myself feel before because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Afraid, and I feel unsafe on some core level. And I just
Well,
wonder,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that. And this is a hard one. A couple of things that I do. One is I go back to my um eh, I don't want to be flip with this. It's not personal, permanent, and perfect, but I do think it speaks to our ultimate reality of our existence, right? So, um I think what's important to remember is that we have to look at a broad spectrum. If we just look at this moment, it could be really intense. It's like if you put a teaspoon of salt in a glass and you drink it of water, it's going to be really intense. If you put it in a bathtub, a teaspoon of salt, you're going to be able to have a different taste. This world that we live in has always been challenging. Our ancestors dealt with crazy stuff,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's the kind of craziness that we feel like at this stage we shouldn't be having to do this again, right? But here we are. But if we can look behind us and ahead of us, we could see that we're in a real broad run of life, right? I'm at an age in my 70s where I can see many decades and many generations even of these harsh times and these amazing times and these crazy times. I see how every step of progress towards racial equity and healing is like 3 steps pulled back because this country is just so not ready for the to be other than it's always been. So it's that's what we're in. That's the truth of it. I mean, sometimes the assault around the way this country is hits me because I forget that this is how it is right now. So if I could just
Yes.
if I could keep remembering this
Yes.
is how it is right now. This
Yes.
country is not a democracy. This
Yes.
country has to fight for democracy.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing. And I'm looking at all the beautiful blooms of people that are doing the absolute best that they can. And there's a lot of goodness happening, and our ancestors did a lot of good things. And we're just in the chain of continuing to plant seeds that will bloom for future generations. That's our job. Our
Yes.
job is to keep planting those seeds despite the circumstances, despite the insanity. And this does feel like a psychotic break. All right. This country feels like that to me. And maybe it needs to be broken. I don't know. But sometimes I think, what the hell is,
Yeah. Yeah.
something needs to be seen and deeply understood here at the collective level.
Yes.
I'm not sure what that's going to take, but
Yes.
for me, and when I look back at what my people have done and what we continue to do and the beauty of our hearts, the good intention of our hearts, that's where I rest my focus on. And who knows what I need to see will happen in my lifetime, but the seeds will be planted.
With those seeds will be planted.
That's my hope and prayer. And that
Yeah.
I need to figure out a way to ride with the harsh reality of that and not miss the beauty that surrounds it as well.
Oh. Oh. Yes. I took a lot of gems from that as well. I needed to hear that. Yeah. Yeah. Because personally, sometimes I feel very distanced from what's happening. And I wonder what's going on with that. Like, is this a healthy distance? I feel like I'm watching a show, like a Truman Show. Like it doesn't feel real. Right? Like there's a derealization. We wanted to get psychological and psychiatric.
Yeah.
With it. Like this derealization, depersonalization, disassociation. And I don't think I'm the only one. And this realization of how much like carnage and violence that's happening across the world, with occupation and genocide and the land crying out.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I just have to remember that, this is not a first round of this. Our ancestors can teach us a lot about this. The indigenous folks teach. I mean, those ways.
Yes.
That's the medicine, and
Yeah.
it's just a real bitter time on many levels, and it makes sense to go numb at times. I could see that. We just don't want to stay there. But sometimes the heart just can't take it for a moment. And we have to soften with that as well.
Yeah.
Then really hold ourselves gently when we come out and be around good people.
Yes.
And keep talking about what's possible as opposed to what's wrong. These are important things.
Yes. Thank you for that. So I have another question for you. As we're moving towards wrap up, a question that I must ask. I'm always just googly eyed when it comes to people's sort of origin stories and how they got to where they are now. Of course, that's like a 3-hour story, and we can't dive into like Little Ruth and what that was like. But I'm curious. I have no doubt that you have a connection to your ancestors, your people, to a sense of who came before you, right? Like grandparents or aunties or folks that made it possible for you to be who you are today. And I wonder if there is anything generationally, right, that your work in the world is helping you. And I'll try to ask it a different way if this doesn't make sense. Helping you uproot personally, professionally, and sort of pave the path for generations after you. Like the 10-year-old little Ruth, did she expect this? Right? What did 10-year-old little Ruth think it would be like? And is 10-year-old little Ruth, if she could say something to you, what might that be? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me play with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it morphs, because memories come to you not in real time, but in later times sometimes, and in dreams and in all these other places. But little Ruth has always had a mantra of, I can't wait to get out. I come from a family of 8 with a single mom and grew up in South Central Los Angeles. There was a lot of struggle. There was a lot of things. But one of the things, I think I always knew that there was more than what I was seeing immediately. Our focus in our lives centered around struggle and, making it and covering your ass and making sure you took care of yourself. And the work ethic was working and making sure you could provide for yourself and your family. So that was a base of that. But I think there was something deep in me that always said, I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to be, there's got to be more. And at this stage of the game, at 76, what I see, what I get more than anything is that my mother, who's an ancestor now, who I didn't always have a close relationship growing up with, but as I got older, it got closer and closer. And even after she passed, it's gotten even more closer. And she literally sits on my right shoulder and whispers in my ear. And I feel like so much of who I am is who she was and more, right? I'm just in awe by it, how I'm a version of her, how much we are our parents and, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how our shape and our ways and our smells and our uh, all these sayings she used to say growing up, just they have so much meaning to me at this stage of my life. Like, girl, keep on living, and dying's not the worst thing that can happen to you, and you know, um, you know, just so many things pop up as I'm moving day to day. It's like she's like my skin. She's never far away. And what she whispers is like the best of her. And some of them are things that I heard many years ago. And so they're like wake up calls. It's like, oh, I remember when you told me that story. Other things are like real time. Like, girl, you might not want to go there. And stories, and just so many stories of race. And, I told her a story once of being in Valdosta, Georgia, and I was teaching a race training for this corporation. I'll never forget it. All white men. They were telling, a group of them were in the back room telling a really nasty joke about a gay person. And before I knew it, I had said, well, I'm gay. I bet you didn't know that, right? And then I went back to my room that night and I was floored from overexposure. And I remember calling my mother that night and said, I don't know why I feel so, I don't even know what the word is. And I remember her saying to me, she says, you could have, and then she was just straight shooter. It wasn't like, oh, baby, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's like, you could have just said, we don't have those jokes in my training, as opposed to coming out. She says, but you're coming out in that moment of impulse. Overexposed you. You could fight the cause without laying your whole heart out. And there was something about hearing that was so, it was like the discernment of a little is a lot. And I didn't always have to sacrifice myself. And there was something about that was so powerful. And she was so masterful at reading a room and reading a situation and understanding how timing and context. She was masterful at that. And I think I learned so much from her without realizing I was learning that, because I think I'm really good at those things now.
You are.
And so I'm constantly bowing to her and paying homage to this inheritance of her street savviness and her ability to know that a little is a lot, and to stay in your seat and to not give yourself away or sacrifice yourself for the cause, but to really, there's other ways to do things. It was just profoundly helpful. And I get a lot of that. The older I get tons of her voice moving through. And she was funny, so there's tons of humor in there too. So I feel so grateful for that. Feel so grateful to have these memories and to really see her wisdom in new ways, because it wasn't always like that.
Would you like to share her name or call her into the?
Her name is Lodi Mae Cherry. Lodi Mae Cherry. She would have turned 100 this year.
Wow.
And she was a woman who gave herself a 90th birthday party.
Yeah.
She was an artist. She played the piano in the church. I think she would have been a phenomenal jazz musician if she hadn't gone more in the direction of the church. But just, if you understand piano and the part of the brain that's activated when you are playing those black and white keys, all of that was a part of her magic and her gift, and our benefit. There was 8 of us, so
yeah.
oof.
Yes. Thank you for bringing in the energy of your mama, Lodi Ming Terry. Yeah. And thank you. You, I believe, are a living embodiment of some aspects of her. And I would say that you're excellent at timing and place and space. It's one of the things that I've always admired about you, and admired that amongst the flames of rage, there's a coolness and a preciseness and a like an archery, like it just hits. And I just thought,
Yeah.
wow, how do I be like that when I grow up? Still a work in progress.
Well, there'll be other things that, it may not be that, but it's something that's a jewel. It's like, how do we ripen the jewels that we are, whatever they might be, and
Yeah.
appreciate what's fed them and nurtured them. And sometimes the lessons are not easy, but necessary. I heard a mythologist say once that the purpose of your mother is to break your heart so deeply that you know what your work is in the world. Okay. And if she doesn't cut you deep enough, then you're floundering around. But if she cuts you real deep, you know what you're here to do.
Yeah.
Oddly, I believe that.
You resonate with that. Oof. Thank you for all that medicine. Yeah, I feel that. I also want to, I wonder, I don't think I'm going to be the only person so curious about this. I kind of feel like it's your like virtual altar offering, but this curious, cute creature statue behind you with the antlers.
Oh,
Like,
I
has
know
this
it.
been
Have you ever seen an owl with antlers? I mean, come on.
No, but it's like flirting with me, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Listen, we all have to wear our crowns, okay?
Yes. Yes, I love it. And is it an owl?
It
With a
is. It's an owl. It's owl medicine.
Mm.
Owl is one of my um, teachers,
Features, yeah.
and it was a gift from my wife, birthday gift. The artist is from Santa Fe. I don't recall the name right off, but one of the powers of it, and then I have little versions of it all around my house. This is a little
I love it.
made by an indigenous person. So owl is big in my life.
Yeah.
And what it says to me is they're just such amazing creatures to watch.
Mm.
There's a mantra that I offer in a lot of the meditations that I teach, and it's, may I see the world through quiet eyes. And this is what the owl represents for me, is seeing the world through quiet eyes, through peaceful eyes, through steady eyes,
Right.
through grounded eyes. The heads of the owls can turn around almost 360 degrees, right? So you're not missing anything, but you're not disturbed, active as well. And you can turn your head in a lot of different directions because you're curious so there's just something about that I like to remember: staying steady, staying quiet, keeping my eyes open, staying in my seat, having my antlers, my crown.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. May I see the world through quiet eyes.
May I see the world through quiet eyes. Yeah. Thank you so much for your crown. Yeah, for your quiet eyes, perceptive eyes. I think your eyes are also chatty in a good way. Thank you for your medicine in this world, for allowing for so many of us, including specifically myself, to be seen. Thank you for saving our lives. Thank you for saving my life, whether or not you knew it, whether or not it was obvious or front facing. I might be a very different person in a very different place if it wasn't for all types of medicine that you brought and placed at my altar. Thank you for giving me the experience of a safe right? I say safe enough because what is safety, right? What is safety?
Right.
But yeah, like
Right.
a safe enough rage retreat experience where I could embody it and be really big and small and tired and scared and all of it and fucking enraged.
Right. Right.
And, to ripping up the bad contracts to loving on it and crying in it, right? And
Mm.
um, I've never walked away from an experience so deeply embodied and yet not in my body in a good way at the
Yeah.
time. In a
Yeah.
good way, right?
Yeah.
Like I think all ancestors were in me. Many wise and well ancestors were in me fortifying. So thank you for the aftercare and the pre-care and the gentleness and the welcoming in a young kid from the East Coast in a sense in my 20s, that perhaps in some ways I didn't feel like I was going to fit into this really cool Berkeley crowd, and
Right.
knew that I
Right.
was needed there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And if we can all take a moment, listeners, viewers, of gratitude for Ruth King, right? If we could breathe into Ruth, just so much fucking gratitude, right? In any way, shape, or form, any nugget that you have received now through her work on mindfulness, through her work on race, through her work on rage, all of it, the threads of it, the cords of it, the presence of who she is now, the embodiment of so many of the ancestors some of us have not been able to have or connect with, right? Sometimes our elders become our family, even if they're not blood relatives. And so may we remember and give all our people their flowers now.
Mm-hmm.
May we give gratitude for those that are good ancestors now. And Ruth, we thank you for your presence, for your quiet eyes, for your beauty, your radiance, your queerness, your blackness, your royaltiness, right? And may we remember that we never again are going to have this moment in this place, in this space, at this time with one another. From Root to Bone is a podcast from Decolonizing Therapy. It is hosted by me, Dr. Jenn Mullen. Our producer is Tribble at Ash Tribble Incorporated. Original music by Laura Burke and cover art by Madre Shell. Don't forget to find us on Instagram at Decolonizing Therapy and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Decolonizing Therapy, for the full video version of each episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your people and leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps people find us. For more info about Decolonizing Therapy, visit our website, www.decolonizingtherapy.com. Be well.